Good afternoon and welcome to Premier League Live for another Sunday double-header of Premier League action. First, we're at St James's Park as Newcastle take on Tottenham. Two sides unbeaten starts to their season. One of them is bound to come to an end today. And later on, one of the oldest and most fiercest rivalries in English football sees Manchester United take on Liverpool at Old Trafford from 4 o'clock this afternoon. Also underway this afternoon is Chelsea against Crystal Palace, a London derby at Stamford Bridge. A few unveilings at Stamford Bridge this afternoon, including Jadon Sancho, who's been unveiled to the Chelsea fans. He's not taking part in today's action, but he's certainly there. Already this weekend we have seen some big results. Arsenal dropping points against Brighton, Southampton making it 3 defeats from 3, Everton the same, yet to get a point this Premier League season after their dramatic collapse at Goodison Park yesterday. Ipswich got their first point at a home draw against Fulham. Leicester again narrowly beaten, but Aston Villa back to winning ways. Forest continue their unbeaten start to the season. Wolves get their first point. City continue their 100% record as well. We'll go through all of those results at half time, but they're quickly speeding to kick off here at St James's Park this afternoon. Two sides, as I said, unbeaten this season after their first two games. Ange Postecoglou's Tottenham got their first win last weekend at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, 4-0 winners against Everton. Newcastle have been anything but convincing in their results this season, maybe scraping a draw out of Bournemouth last week controversially, but a point is a point. Eddie Howe's side did progress in the Carabao Cup in midweek on penalties against Nottingham Forest, and they'll want to build on that victory to make it another victory in the Premier League. Let's have a look at the teams then for this afternoon's game. A quiet deadline day for both of these clubs. Newcastle start with Nick Pope in goal. Tino Livramento comes back in at right back after Kieran Trippier got his start in midweek. Emil Kraft continues again alongside Dan Burn and Lloyd Kelly in defence. Bruno Guimaraes captains the Newcastle side, who's joined alongside Sean Longstaff and Joe Linton in midfield. Joe Linton had a game to forget last weekend away at Bournemouth. He'll be looking to make up for that pretty poor performance. And a front three that some have been mainly asking for over the last few weeks from a Newcastle point of view. Harvey Barnes off the right, Anthony Gordon off the left, and Alexander Isak leading the line. From Tottenham, again as I said, a quiet deadline day for them as well. Vicario continues in goal. Pedro Porro, Christian Romero, Radu Dragoshin and Destiny Adogi are the back four. Yves Bissouma, Pap Sarr and James Maddison make up the midfield, with Dejan Kulusevski, Wilson Odobert off the left, and captain Heung-min Son, who scored a brace against Everton last week. He'll want to continue his goal-scoring form here this afternoon at St James's Park. Two sides, as I said, unbeaten, and they want to keep that running. But one thing that Spurs have to do is make sure they don't face the same result the last time they were here in the Premier League, an absolute 4-0 pasting. Kick-off between Newcastle and Tottenham is next. A very good afternoon and welcome to the first of our two Premier League commentaries this afternoon on LFS as Newcastle take on Tottenham, two sides who are hoping for European places this season. That is their targets. Tottenham, of course, back in Europe after no European football last season, and Newcastle going the opposite direction. No Europe for Eddie Howe's side after 2 consecutive seasons of it. Well, let's see then if Eddie Howe can get his side to build upon that midweek result. Tottenham, they have a result of their own that they could build on from last week, as I said. And this is set up to be a pretty close matchup between these two sides. Pretty well matched in previous seasons. Not in the results terms, to be honest, but in the way they've played against other teams and their form against other opposition has been pretty similar over the last 2 years or so. As I said, also getting underway in London this afternoon in the capital, in a London derby between Chelsea and Crystal Palace. We'll keep you up to date with everything that happens in that game as it happens. Remember, Chelsea were actually in our match focus for our 2 o'clock game last week, which involved Newcastle, and then winning 6-2 away at Wolves. They'll be hoping for something of the same there. We'll see. Newcastle, of course, in their black and white striped home shirts. and Tottenham in a change strip this afternoon. Of course, can't play in white this afternoon. They play in a kind of faded blue colour. It's like Man City, but drab, really. Kickoff here then. And of course, this crowd can really change a game for this Newcastle team. We witnessed it many's a time under Eddie Howe. The atmosphere inside this stadium can really change the dynamics of a game. And that's something that I'm sure Spurs will want to deal with better this season than what they did last season. As I said, an absolute pasting here. 4-0 they lost here at St James's Park. The reverse fixture actually last season was a 4-1 win for the home side as well in Tottenham. The last time this game was close in the Premier League was back in October 2022, 4 games ago, when Newcastle won 2-1 at Tottenham. Since then, the winner has won by at least 3 goals on the last 3 occasions. So a tight game, not a known circumstance with this fixture. As Newcastle have an early free kick, popped forward, flicked on for Isak, who's brought it down in the box, but can't make the most of it as he cuts it back, trying to find Anthony Gordon. But Spurs clear their lines. And that's pretty crucial for Ange Postecoglou's team early on. Don't want to give anything away in the first couple of minutes. Don't want to gift anything to Newcastle in the early doors. And we're also keeping an eye on actions at Celtic Park this afternoon in the Old Firm derby, the first Old Firm of this season. That was a 12:30 kickoff, so they're just coming into the second half there. Just as I say that, here's Heung-min Son. Nice Sarr. Was told to shoot by the distant crowd of Tottenham fans high up in the heavens inside St James's Park, but decided not to that time. Sarr. Try and get an early bit of possession. As I was saying, the Old Firm derby just coming into the second half in that one between Celtic and Rangers, and it is Celtic 2, Rangers 0. Goals from Daisen Maeda and Kyogo for those two. So Celtic 2-0 up, and we'll keep an eye on that one as it unfolds this afternoon. The champions in Scotland looking to make it 4 wins out of 4 to start the season under Brendan Rodgers. So here comes Joe Linton for Newcastle. Down the left-hand side for Barnes. Flicks it on for Joe Linton. Nice 1-2. And Joe Linton's ball across, bobbling into the hands of the Spurs keeper, Guillermo Vicario. Of course, I was expecting Anthony Gordon to start from the left, but Harvey Barnes is on the left flank for Newcastle. Anthony Gordon, who did play a bit on the right whenever Barnes did come on last week against Bournemouth. He did go out to that right flank, Anthony Gordon, so that looks to be the case for the moment. Barnes off the left and Anthony Gordon off the right, with of course Isak through the middle. Of course, both sides have had 1 win and 1 draw in their first 2 Premier League games. Spurs drawing their first away game of the season away at Leicester. They had an absolute hatful of chances in that first half against Leicester, where they could have went more than 1-0 up, but leaving it at 1-0 is always a dangerous scoreline, especially away from home, and you give the home side belief. That's exactly what Spurs did. Certainly didn't give any belief to Everton last week. Absolutely destroyed Everton at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. 4-0 victors. From a Newcastle point of view, they edged out Southampton in their first home game of the season on Matchday 1. 10-man Newcastle. Don't think they want to replicate that. I think they would like to keep 11 on the field this week. That's a lovely reverse ball into Longstaff, and now down the left hand side comes Barnes. He breaks away from his man and goes down, and the referee is gonna give a corner because Radu Dragoshin put it out behind, and the referee felt the corner was the more appropriate decision. And it's a good challenge by Dragoshin. It's not a foul, but it's a really good challenge. Running back towards his own goal, sliding down against a pacey winger in Harvey Barnes and putting it out for the first corner of the game. Radu Dragoshin in the side and already involved in the action. Corner for Newcastle. Right-footed delivery, and it's bouncing up into the box, but Son can clear. Isak tracking him down and dispossesses the Spurs captain as Isak tries to go across goal, hits the crossbar. Goodness me. I don't know whether he meant that or not, but it'd be hard to say that he didn't mean it. There was no one arriving for Newcastle to get on the end of the cross, and I think Isak just thought, why not hit it? Why not try and curl it and test the goalkeeper? He's got the crowd up inside this stadium. Here's Joe Linton, does well against Pedro Porro and ends up winning the free kick against the Spurs right back. Just see this here. Son can clear his lines and it's just a little barge from Isak. Just shoves him out of the way. Far too easily dispossessed from Son's point of view. And Isak arrives on the right hand side of the box and just tries to kind of chip it across goal. There was no one in there arriving for Newcastle and it just floats to closer and closer to the goal line and comes crashing off the crossbar. But certainly intentional, I would have to say, from Alexander Isak. That's a lovely switch ball out to the left hand side, and the referee is going to give a free kick against Joe Linton this time. He brought the ball down and tried to get past Porro. Ended up fouling the Spurs man. And he chests it down well the first time and just tries to take the touch around him. Porro blocks him off and then he just drags Porro to the floor, does Joe Linton. It is a foul. High tempo start to this one, as that's dreadful from Nick Pope. Just absolutely hoofed that one out unnecessarily. And puts more pressure on Newcastle. Now one key player for Spurs today, Wilson Odobert, one of their summer signings, joined from Burnley for just under £25 million from Burnley just 2 weeks ago. The 19-year-old Frenchman, a real blaster last season when Burnley were in the Premier League, was certainly one of their biggest assets, one of their biggest threats in the Premier League. Albeit minimal threats overall, but he was one of their biggest, Wilson Odobert, and he's been pipped by Tottenham. There's a shot to Sandro Tonali, of course, who returned from his 10-month suspension from football during the week. That game against Nottingham Forest in the Carabao Cup. Of course, not handed his first Premier League start since the ban this afternoon, but I'm sure we'll see him at some point. Here's Bissouma, lovely ball in behind as Kulishevsky was just edged out of the way there by a retreating Dan Burn. And now Newcastle come forward, lovely touch by Gordon, he's got Isak ahead of him, finds Barnes off the left. Harvey Barnes arriving, Harvey Barnes just wide. That was lovely counter-attacking football from Newcastle, from one end to the other in a matter of seconds, and it's just one long ball down the right channel to find Anthony Gordon. Takes a lovely touch infield and just sees Harvey Barnes drifting off the left hand side, decides to chop onto his right foot to the edge of the box and try to curl it into the top corner. Not too far away from Harvey Barnes, just narrowly wide. That was really good counter-attacking football from Newcastle. Just breaking quickly on Tottenham with a lot of pace. And that's exactly why a lot of people have been calling for the likes of Harvey Barnes and Anthony Gordon to both be in the Newcastle side. I mean, I'm sure it's something that Eddie Howe will be hoping for long term, but already in the first 9 minutes we've seen them combine twice or even 3 times in the game with those wingers, really causing a threat for Newcastle early doors. Here's Maddison. He's barely had a touch so far for Spurs. A doggy. Now to Son. Back to Bissouma. Now Dragoshin has to go back to Christian Romero, who had a stormer of a week last week as well. Got on the score sheet. Could have had more than one last week against Everton. Christian Romero. I mean, Everton were hopeless against Spurs last week. They were giving away chances galore. That's lovely football in between the lines here by Odobert. and Kulishevsky received it, but the flag goes up against them there. Might have been actually Odebear that was offside. One of the two of them. Say it again. Yeah, the ball over the top, and Odebear, yeah, it's Kulishevsky just offside as Odebear makes the touch into his path, and Kulishevsky just drifted in behind the defence. Didn't hold his run enough there. Here's a doggy. Son, central here, is Heung-min Son. Has to go back to Romero. Out of possession, Newcastle playing a 4-5-1. Switching into a 5-4-1 at times. With Guimaraes dropping in. So certainly trying to pack the midfield and send Spurs down the wide areas. Certainly not wanting them to play through. On that occasion, they've a corner they've given away. So a corner for Tottenham on the right hand side. It's clearly an intent from Eddie Howe's team to not be broken through the middle as they take the corner short. Spurs, right footed delivery, and the flick on has found a way in, but Christian Romero is offside. The flag went up pretty quickly from the assistant, but the corner taken short and taken really quickly by Tottenham, and it's just the ball out to the edge of the box, and yeah, Romero and his mate Son there, both offside for Tottenham. No questions about that one. Again, Nick Pope should have done better. The Newcastle keeper, that was pretty horrendous in terms of trying to keep it out of the net. Did bundle its way in, but luckily for the Newcastle keeper, saved his blushes by the offside flag. Again, there's that threat from set pieces from Spurs. Something I'm sure Newcastle will be very wary of, as one of those Newcastle players on the floor, Lloyd Kelly. He used to play for Bournemouth, used to play under Eddie Howe at Bournemouth. He just went up for a challenge with Kulishevsky and ended up landing pretty awkwardly there to Lloyd Kelly. He's back on his feet and is okay to continue. Barnes, Joe Linton. Barnes again. Back to Longstaff. Guimaraes just got away from Kulishevsky there in time. As it comes out to the right hand side, Livramento. Gordon. Back to Longstaff again. Looks to switch it out to the left. Finds it. Harvey Barnes in acres of space. Flicks it through for Joe Linton. Joe Linton across with a cut back, but not much pace in that one as Guimaraes tries to intercept. But again, the offside flag goes up against Joe Linton this time. Just got the return ball from Harvey Barnes, maybe just a slight bit too late. Harvey Barnes, ever since joining Newcastle, has been a major threat down that left hand side, and a lot of teams, I mean, even when he was at Leicester, when Leicester were kind of competing at the upper echelons of the table, competing for European places, Harvey Barnes was that key threat down the left flank for Leicester when he was, and we're seeing that come back into his form here for Newcastle as Son comes down the left for Spurs, and the ball across the box was a threatening one, but no one there to pounce for Tottenham. Cycled again with Sarr. Bissouma back to Sarr, now out to the right hand side comes Odebear up against Kelly. Odebear takes on his man, puts a cross in, but easily gathered there by Nick Pope. Certainly wide areas has been the most threatening from both teams. Son and Odebear for Spurs, and then Gordon and Barnes for Newcastle. The width is really important for both of these teams. Playing off the wings. So far we're seeing good quality attacking football. It's a competitive match so far as this is a nice ball in behind for Gordon. Chased all the way by Romero, who ends up trying to save it. Just for a throw in, but it kind of loses his footing there, Christian Romero, and it goes out for a corner to Newcastle. But again, as I said, those pacey kind of forwards from Newcastle, those wingers in Barnes and Gordon, you send them a ball into an area and they will run it down and chase it until they get it. They've got the pace to, and they've got a corner out of it, Newcastle, which Gordon will take. on the right hand side. Height in there for Newcastle to try and get on the end of it as Gordon lifts it to the back post and still bouncing around. Vicario got a touch on it, but the strike there from Kraft takes a deflection and goes wide. Another Newcastle corner incoming. I mean, the Spurs keeper was surrounded, but wasn't really commanding in his own box there. He did get a touch to it, but it was kind of, certainly wasn't the most dominant goalkeeping display from Vicario, and it was Romero's deflection that put it behind for the corner. On this left-hand side now, as Dragoshin went down for a second there, but I don't know what that's all about, and the referee, Rob Jones, is just going to have a chat with Joelinton and Dragoshin, who got in a bit of a tangle there. Well, we've already seen some interesting decisions, shall we say, from the Premier League this weekend. Here's a corner, right-footed delivery, flicked on by Isak, but over the bar. That was Kelly, actually, right beside Isak. And Lloyd Kelly heads it over the bar. See it again, he peels off well, and Isak's just beside him. Very close, but Kelly did get the definitive touch and ultimately headed it over the bar. As I was saying, some interesting results from the Premier League this weekend in terms of refereeing decisions. Of course, the Arsenal-Brighton one will continue to split opinion and cause debate, but at the end of the day, I think the referee had to make a decision, and that decision was in the basis of the rules. You cannot kick the ball away, although I do get the Arsenal frustrations that there was a ball kicked by a Brighton player earlier in the game and he didn't get a yellow card, but nonetheless, we don't worry about that. Always cause debate as there's issue here. I think there might be an issue with communications here from the assistant. So we do have a stoppage in play, which I think it might be. I've no idea. I'm not going to guess between the assistants. It's Ian Husson or Nick Greenhalgh, who are both the assistants to the referee Rob Jones today. But there's a few issues with communication, so I'm guessing that's the case because the referee has just stopped the game and he's got the ball in his hand, and the assistant is waiting for some assistance, quite ironically. Which gives Ange Postecoglou and Eddie Howe some time to talk to their players. Let's update you from around the grounds. While we do have this break in play, let's go to the London Derby. That's also underway at the same time as us, as Chelsea take on Crystal Palace. Chelsea, a pretty topsy-turvy start to the season. Lost to Manchester City on the opening match day, but 6-2 winners away at Wolves last weekend. Crystal Palace have had a pretty dismal start to their campaign. 2 defeats from their 2 Premier League games under Oliver Glasner, but did get a convincing victory in the Carabao Cup in midweek. 4-0 winners against Norwich. It is still 0-0 at Stamford Bridge this afternoon between Chelsea and Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace have had 1 or 2 more chances than Chelsea, but Chelsea having more possession. Very little in the game, let's just say. Very little in terms of attacking quality in the first 18 minutes or so of that one at Stamford Bridge. It is Chelsea 0, Crystal Palace 0. It was 2-1 between Chelsea and Palace last season at Stamford Bridge. So we do have this continuing of an issue at the moment, which is, I have no idea what it is. I do apologise. There is a continuing and a break in play here at the moment, and I think the assistant has had to be swapped out here. If I'm not mistaken, the assistant's just put a jacket on. So there is this big break in play. We'll have a lot of extra added time at the end of the first half. Very strangely so, but you know, it's first time for everything. Well, so far, just sum up the stats for you from this one this afternoon. so far. Spurs having more possession so far, 57% to Newcastle's 43%. But in terms of chances, in terms of shots, Spurs yet to have a definitive shot in the game. Newcastle, contrastingly, have had 5, but yet to have a shot on target in this one so far. But there are certainly threats. And I would say Newcastle look the more threatening of the two, with the likes of Barnes and Gordon so far. Barnes come the closest, of course, with that really good effort between link up between Gordon and Barnes having that shot just narrowly wide. But that's probably the closest we've come to finding a goal so far, as the players are just kicking the ball alright. And we do have a little swapping of the assistants. I've never seen this before, but there we are, it happens. It's not only players that can pull muscles and get injured, it is assistants and referees as well, and the assistant referee has had to come off here. So he's going to be replaced by the fourth official. So Darren Bond, who was the fourth official, has now been is the replacement for the assistant, who I'm not too sure whose the name is at this moment, but the assistant who started the game running the line is now going to be the fourth official. Interesting. Right, it gets us back underway then. A very strange stoppage that you very rarely see in football nowadays, or even at all. James Maddison. Spurs want to make the most of this restart as Bissouma ticking down there, and free kick, throw in to Tottenham. As they've taken quickly. Maddison now back to Bissouma. Romero. Back to Vicario. Vicario goes long, trying to find Heung-min Son, who does get his head to it. Maddison just beaten there by Sean Longstaff as Newcastle recover the ball. Longstaff plays it off a doggy and wins the throw in for Newcastle. Still an update from the Old Firm at the moment in Glasgow at Celtic Park. It is Celtic 2, Rangers 0. It remains with over just less than 30 minutes to go in that one, and the home side still very much firmly in control. So Romero goes up for the header, brought down by Bissouma, but facing his own goal at the moment. Tries to turn, could only put it out of play for a Newcastle throw-in. Good pressure there from the home team there, as Gordon does well to flick it across to Joe Linton. Back to Gordon. Lovely intricate play here. Longstaff. Now out wide to Livramento. Back to Joe Linton. Looking for options as he tries to break into the box, but well closed out by a doggy. And Son tries to get Spurs on the front foot. Down the left. Nice play there. A doggy. Kulishevsky. Now Maddison drifts it out to the right hand side. Comes Audebert. Good play by Spurs. Audebert breaks into the box, and this shot is not kept down by Wilson Audebert, and it goes behind for a goal kick. But first real time we've seen Spurs kind of combine as a team to break forward. So far, if they have come forward, Tottenham, it's been a kind of a solo run from a Son or other than a Kulishevsky or an Audebert so far, whereas we haven't really seen the team combination so far, and that's the first real time in the game that we've seen it, and that ended up in a shot. Not on goal in the end, but a shot nonetheless. It's Maddison dispossessed there. Shielded well as that's cleared up the pitch by Kelly. Back the way it came by Dragoshin with a dramatic header that time. Brought down by Sarr. Maddison. He's lifted into the box, but just a bit short as Livramento clears away. Guimaraes linking up well with Longstaff, but Longstaff's ball a hopeful one, but in the end won back by Tottenham. Romero tried to go over the top, but easily gathered by Nick Pope. Certainly trying things, these two, testing the opposition. I mean, we've seen a number of offsides so far in this game for both teams, so clearly the ball in behind is a target, especially considering the runners they have. Both teams, that is. They can certainly threaten, as Gordon just dispossessed a bit easily by Maddison there. Kulishevsky trying to cross it. Gets the second chance at it, cuts it back for Son. Lays it off now for Bissouma, who has a good save by Nick Pope there. And it goes behind for a corner. The threatening one was Sarr, actually, that had the shot. It was good cut back by Kulishevsky, and Son on the edge of the box just lays it off to Pap Sarr, who's completely unmarked. Spurs have taken the corner quickly again, but Newcastle cleared away. But really straight and kind of pacey effort from Pap Sarr, and it forced Nick Pope to make that parrying save. As here's Son on the left. Spurs in a good moment so far, as Son's cross is flicked away by Kelly. Really threatening at the moment, Spurs. Starting to put crosses in, really starting to ask Newcastle questions after a first 20 minutes or so, where Newcastle were probably slightly shading the game in that sense. And now Spurs have just started to play their football and starting to get a bit of joy as Madison finds Kulishevsky. Edge of the box, who wants to shoot. Well charged down. It's one back by Udogie. Romero. And now Madison again. We have a goal in at Stamford Bridge to tell you about in the London Derby. And I said there was lacking attacking quality in the game all the way throughout, and as I was updating, only one shot on target. But Chelsea have certainly made some big attacking signings this summer, but there's a man that they brought in last summer, Nicholas Jackson, who has scored for Chelsea. It is Chelsea 1, Crystal Palace 0, and it was a period of dominance from Chelsea. A couple of minutes where they've been threading through balls. They've got their opener as cross to Son here for Spurs. They're still threatening in and around this Newcastle box. Son cuts it back for Kulishevsky, lays it off now, and the shot from Sarr is again a good strike, but a good save by Nick Pope. Starting to turn the screw now, Spurs. But again, I said it was a good save by Nick Pope, but he probably should be kind of shuffling across and grabbing that one. There's not massive kind of power behind it. It's not an unsavable effort, to be honest. It's one where he should be catching, or he could very much catch it, but decides to parry, and another corner for Newcastle to defend. Short corner could have been an option, but they go long this time, and Kelly at the back post gets it away, but Son picks it back up for Spurs. Bissouma, now Son again down the left. Absolutely nutmegs Lloyd Kelly, and Kelly wasn't letting him get away with that one. And he ticks down Son and gets a yellow card for it. Does Lloyd Kelly. Yeah, smart play from Son. Knows that the defender is going to try and take him out. Lovely skill, and tries to beat his man and ends up on the floor. And Lloyd Kelly gets a yellow card, the first of the game. But again, it continues that period of good attacking play from Spurs, and just that period of pressure that Newcastle have come under. It's all about seeing it through without any damage being done. As Madison over this free kick for Spurs. Left hand side. Newcastle getting almost everybody in the box. Now 8 players on the 6-yard line as Madison tries to sneak it across the front post. Cleared away. Picked up by Audebert. And Porro with the effort, but he certainly scored a cracker before, as Pedro Porro. A number of them. And that one just couldn't stop it from flying over the bar. Again, similar idea of Spurs just really continuing to grow into this game and threatening Newcastle on multiple occasions so far. I think that stoppage certainly didn't help Newcastle. They lost their rhythm, they've lost their momentum, and Spurs have kind of found their way into the game and are taking control of it now and starting to get a bit of attacking output. Pope goes long, a bouncing ball, as Gordon was trying to sneak in behind, but well gathered by Vicario. Now Spurs can break forward here with Son. Flicks it across to Bissouma. as he tries to come forward there. Bissouma probably thought there was no options and decided to rescue it for the throw. Did well to get the throw, did Yves Bissouma. Was suspended for Spurs' first game of the season against Leicester, but made his reappearance last week. Did get on the score sheet last week against Everton at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, and Ange Postecoglou will be hoping he gives a similar effort this week as Spurs give it away in the midfield. Isak trying to weave his way through and does incredibly well there, Isak, to win a corner. Porro there celebrating, defending that situation, but it's a poor giveaway by Spurs in the midfield, and they just find the gap for Isak to break down the left, and as he tries to break into the box, there's 2 or 3 Spurs players around him, and he knows he's not going to get through and decides to get the corner out of the situation. This is Newcastle's 4th corner of the game. Gordon to deliver again, right-footed. Whipped across, Vicario punches, but falls for Longstaff. And Spurs deal with that situation as Longstaff couldn't make much of that. And now they want to counter. Here's Kulusevski down the left. He's got minimal options as Audibert is the only one up there. Here is Kulusevski. Looks to try and find him. Goes off Lloyd Kelly and out for a corner. One corner at one end, to the other end for a corner for the opposing team. End to end so far this game. I'd say in a period where Spurs have been the better side, but still looks like either team could get the first goal in this one. As both centre-backs for Tottenham coming up into the box, Dragoshin and Romero. Romero's already headed the ball into the net. Offside though. Son flicks it back to the edge of the box, but a shot well charged down as Porro goes again. And now this time has to be wary of a counter-attack, as Byrne went bundling to the floor, but the referee said no foul as Byrne just blocks that one for a Spurs throw. But again, being very crafty with these corners, Spurs. Take it short. They've taken a couple of short corners, and it's Madison just squares it right across the Son. He drifts across the front post, flicks it onto the edge of the box, and Pedro Porro just strikes through it. Straight off the training ground for Spurs, but again, Newcastle had a lot of bodies in the middle that blocked that Porro chance. Didn't look like it was going to squeeze it anyway through the wall of Newcastle bodies that were in there. It's Pope. Rolls it across to Kraft. Now Livramento. Spurs applying the press. Here's Longstaff. Back to Kraft. He has to go long. Again, good touch by Gordon, but surrounded by Spurs players as Tottenham try and break away. And they will win the throw in there, Tottenham. That's really good pressing. Gets a round of applause from their manager, Ange Postecoglou. Of course, when he's got something to say to his team, he's certainly not afraid to say it, Ange Postecoglou. Very vocal on the sideline. But so far, not very vocal this afternoon. Although, I think this team, as I said, have grown into the game. They had a tough start, but as they would expect, it's Newcastle, it's St James's Park. It's not going to be an easy one. It's never easy for any team, and to be honest, for Newcastle, it was important that they probably got an advantage in the early moments, but Pap Sarr's just got a yellow card here for a foul. Just see this again. It's Lloyd Kelly just striding into the challenge. I mean, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, really. They're both going into the challenge. But Pap Sarr gets the yellow card. To be honest, actually Sarr does stand on the leg of Kelly, but there's not malice in it or any kind of mad intent, and Pap Sarr gets just a yellow for that challenge on Lloyd Kelly. We have just seen another incredible goal from Celtic at Celtic Park, and from their captain Callum McGregor. See it again. Callum McGregor, similar to the one that he scored a few weeks ago, and it's an absolute perler. Does take a deflection, I believe, and it curls away. Why anybody would have liked Callum McGregor to do that is beyond me. But the Celtic captain absolutely tearing up the Rangers defence, and they've added a third, and the victory was pretty much certain for Celtic at 2-0. It is most certainly dead and buried now for Rangers at Celtic Park, and Celtic, again, similar theme as of recent Old Firm derbies. Brendan Rodgers had an incredible record in Old Firms, and that record is continuing. It is Celtic 3, Rangers 0. Back here though at St James's Park, still goalless between Newcastle and Tottenham with 10 minutes or so to go of the first half. Neither side have been able to find a breakthrough, and Doggy just giving away a bit of a cheap free kick there against Livramento. Just striding back to try and defend the situation, and as he tries to go for the ball, he's just bundled Livramento over for no apparent reason. I mean, he was running into the corner flag. It would have been a goal kick if he just let him run, but Doggy giving away maybe a cheap free kick. And one that Spurs have to defend as Gordon over this set piece. Lots of bodies in there. Dan Burnham sure will be a big target as Gordon lifts it across, and I think it was Basuma that got a flick on as Spurs clear their lines, but Newcastle not wanting to give up on this just yet. At that time, he just took it out for a throw as Livramento take no risks. So this time they've gone quickly. The ball cut crossing. That's a lovely finish by Harvey Barnes. Quick take and throw. Cut back into the box. And Harvey Barnes rifling it into the Spurs net for Newcastle. He's been a threat for Newcastle all afternoon. He'd come the closest to opening the scoring. Well, this time he has opened the scoring. Harvey Barnes, a fact here at the St James's Park in full flow. Quick throw down the left-hand side, and Spurs just really don't get themselves kind of organised in time. The cross from the left-hand side is beautiful. The cutback from Lloyd Kelly through the legs of Madison, and Harvey Barnes unmarked as he strides into the box and just gets a right foot to it, curling away from Vicario. No chance for the Spurs keeper. That is a wonderful goal by Harvey Barnes, and exactly probably what Newcastle needed in this first half. In a period of limbo for the Toon, Harvey Barnes gives Newcastle the lead. It's first of the season, and surely won't be his last, I would guess. Newcastle 1, Tottenham 0. It's all about response from Spurs for now. Here's Sarr. First time that Spurs have gone behind this season. Took the lead against Leicester and didn't concede against Everton. It's the first time they've conceded the first goal. It's the first time they will really be asked about their character and their belief as a team. But they can come back into this one and get something. But Newcastle, I said, haven't been particularly convincing in moments this afternoon. They have had one or two little spells, but nothing in real great dominance from Newcastle at any point in this game so far. But all that matters is that scoreline at the top of the screen. That's all that they will care about. And their side so far, I said about Newcastle, I've mentioned it in the last two commentaries for Newcastle. They've got through, maybe by the skin of their teeth. They've not won convincingly this season, but the point is, they're still yet to lose. 3 games down, and they're still yet to lose. And that's the key point. When you can not be at your best and still get good results, is the sign of a good team, and a team that can grow and be better and certainly compete at the top level. As Anthony Gordon puts in a challenge there on Madison. Maybe gets a frustrating response from the Spurs man. But Madison takes the free kick short. But of course Spurs will know they're not out of this game. Very much not. And well capable of scoring. So far this afternoon, they've had one or two half chances at that. Only 2 shots on target have come from Papsar shots from the edge of the box. Both parried away by Nick Pope, but other than that, they've not really got a clear-cut goal-scoring opportunity they've made in this first half, Tottenham. That's a lovely ball by Bissouma. Madison trying to cut it across, but locked out by Dan Burn, who cleared it away for Newcastle. Doggy took the throw in quickly. Madison tried to play it across, but Newcastle intercepting. Well, that ball forward couldn't find Isak. Romero now finds a doggy, looking to drift into the half space. And a doggy drifting into that half space wins a free kick off Sean Longstaff. And a yellow card as well for the man who was the hero at the City grounds on Wednesday nights, scoring that penalty that sent Newcastle into the third round of the Carabao Cup. And he's just kind of took a doggy from behind there, and there's no doubts about that. Yellow card Longstaff felt was a bit harsh, but that type of challenge will always be kind of disciplined, appropriately so. And Longstaff, another booking from the team, from both teams this afternoon. Newcastle second. As Madison and Son over this one for Spurs. This could be a good chance for Tottenham. Son leaves it. Madison looks to go short with it, and Kulishevsky was offered no space as the ball comes to the edge of the box, and Porro's shot over the bar, but the free kick was actually given just before that shot for a foul on Sean Longstaff. Free kick for Newcastle. Well, don't forget, this is not the only offering of Premier League this afternoon here in LFS. We have one of the biggest rivalries in not only English football, but probably world football to tell you about. And a fierce one at Old Trafford a bit later on, as Arne Slot gets his first taste of Manchester United as a Liverpool manager. And Erik ten Hag yet to get a good result in recent times against Liverpool. He has won at Old Trafford with Man United before against Liverpool, and most recently so in the FA Cup. Can they repeat it in the league? Kickoff at 4 o'clock this afternoon between United and Liverpool, which will bring another Premier League weekend to a close again. It's speeding by. It'll be our last game before the international break. We'll tell you all about what's coming up in LFS during the international break and afterwards, during the half-time here. As Guimaraes, lovely, squeezes that through a little gap, finds Longstaff. Down the right-hand side comes Livramento. Feeds it on to try and find Gordon, but Romero will usher that one out for a goal kick. Again, that clear kind of intent from Newcastle to try and feed in their runners in behind, in the likes of Gordon and Barnes, and another idea, another example of that there. Spurs trying to play it from the back there, and Isak almost closing down Romero as Longstaff does this time on Madison. Now Joe Linton round the corner for Isak, just couldn't reach it as Dragoshin got involved. And now Spurs just have to get it away up the field. Here's Kulishevsky. Now finds Audebert, looking for an option across the halfway line, but has to go backwards first and foremost. Here's Madison. Now to the left is Son, isolated on that left flank. No one within 10 yards of him in his own team's colours, but a few in Newcastle. As he cuts it back to Bissouma. Looks to try and open up for the shots. Squares it across to Porro. Back to Sarr. Now Madison. No spaces at all through the middle for Spurs as Son comes down the left again. And squeeze it through the box, but Gordon closes that one down and Newcastle clear it away. Last couple of seconds of the first half. Romero. Bissouma. Romero again. I think Spurs just need to move it quicker. Haven't moved it quick enough in this first half, and one big chance that led to kind of a shot ultimately off target from Otterbear, but their best kind of team play of the half so far was when they moved it really quickly, one touch, move, pass and move football, and really for the majority of this half we haven't really seen that from Spurs, as we will have 5 added minutes as we had that stoppage around about 25 minutes ago. So 5 added minutes at the end of the half. Still more than enough time for Spurs to respond here before the interval. But as was said, Spurs just really haven't kind of been as fluid or as fast, as pacey in this first half as what we've seen previously from them. They were blistering, but at this moment it is just a bit too laboured. Need to move it quicker as Otterbear cuts it back for Porro. Porro's cross is up for Madison, and Newcastle again clearing their lines through Dan Burn. As Dragoshin committed there and just didn't catch the ball right, as Newcastle again trying to win those 50-50s, but Dragoshin comes out the better and ultimately upended that time Radu Dragoshin. And a free kick for Spurs and a yellow card for the perpetrator, Joe Linton. Quite a number of yellow cards in this first half. Referee certainly not letting anything go unpunished. And Joe Linton gets his second booking of the season. So another set piece for Spurs to take. They really haven't been, other than those short corners, in terms of free kicks, they haven't been as threatening as probably they could have been, Spurs. This time it's not going to be Madison to take. It's Porro that's over this one. Unorthodox. Porro to deliver into the box and all the way across. Son tries to keep it in. He did keep it in. Lovely bit of skill from Son. Back to Madison on the left flank, and couldn't cleanly find that ball through to Dragoshin, but does get the throw in out of it, which they take quickly. Is Bissouma. Dragoshin. Again, the ball colliding between Gordon and Dragoshin, and the last touch off the Spurs defender sees Newcastle get the throw in. Just seems like those little moments just going for Newcastle in this first half, those little touches, little droppages of the ball, the bounce of the ball, just seemingly just edging in Newcastle's favour. But of course you can't say the ball is biased or the wind. I think Spurs have just been a bit too weak in the first half at times in those challenges. I think they need to be more physically dominant, more physically commanding, but also be quicker when they play. Spurs, as Kelly does really well against Otterbear there, seen off the Frenchman pretty comfortably, as Pope tries to dart it long out to the left side, but Porro heads that one out for a throw. 2 minutes of the first half to go. Newcastle 1, Spurs 0 here at St James's Park. Harvey Barnes the scorer. Lovely cross by Lloyd Kelly, cut back into the box, and Harvey Barnes striding it into the far right corner for 1-0. Long throw from Kelly this time, up the line. Flicked on by a Spurs player into the path of Isak, who does hold the ball up well here. Really good hold up play. Finds Livramento, bodies forward here for Newcastle. Ball into the box deep, but Vicario watched it all the way and gathered it comfortably. But again, from the throw-in, from a Newcastle throw-in, they put the pressure on Spurs, and Spurs kind of just wilted under the pressure. Porro just headed it right into the path of Isak, and then they were in, Newcastle. That's a nice weighted ball to Son now on the left. Finds Madison, but seen out by Dan Burn. And I think the referee is not going to be moved here. Or has he? Because Madison's gone down under what he calls a challenge from Dan Burn. I would call it nothing at all. And James Madison's running around the floor in pain at the moment. I'll say it again. Maybe I could be wrong, but there's nothing in that. I mean, it maybe gets on his toe, tips his toes a bit, but that's not a foul. It's good defending by Jan Burnt. Strong physical defending. And James Maddison went down a bit too easily there, and I think the referee had the similar view. Ultimately, the ball went out for a goal kick for Newcastle. Last couple of seconds of the half. So Nick Pope taking his time on this one. Goes long. And the first header won by Spurs, but that was the end of the first half. A first half where it has ebbed and flowed between the two sides for the majority of the affair. But it is Newcastle that I said had shaded it. And contrary to Spurs' little spell in the middle after that stoppage, it was Harvey Barnes that broke the deadlock. And it is that has Newcastle ahead at the break. Half-time at St James's Park. Newcastle 1, Tottenham 0. Analysis on the way next.
Catch me if I fall.
Welcome back to Premier League Live this afternoon on LFS. Half-time at St James's Park. It is Newcastle United 1, Tottenham Hotspur 0. At the break, Harvey Barnes' goal separating the two sides. But we've already seen some big results already this Premier League weekend. 7 to be exact from yesterday. Let's run through them then for you. It started yesterday lunchtime at the Emirates in a controversial game as 10-man Arsenal dropped points for the very first time this season. Brighton also lost their 100% record that both sides kind of touted before the game, winning their first two league games of the season, both of those. But it was a point apiece at the Emirates. Arsenal took the lead in the game in that one before a interestingly controversial decision after Kai Havertz's goal in the second half. Declan Rice got a yellow card in the first half for a foul and got a second yellow card for time wasting after he kicked the ball away, or slightly tipped the ball away from the opponent as he was trying to take a free kick. The referee took his time to make his decision, but ultimately I would say came to the right conclusion that a second yellow card was the right decision. You can't kick the ball away no matter what. But of course Arsenal frustrated that there was no consistency in that decision, as João Pedro kicked the ball away in the first half for Brighton and didn't get the similar booking. Ultimately, not long after that, 9 minutes after Declan Rice was sent packing, Brighton were back in the game and back level. João Pedro, who scored now 2 in as many weeks for Brighton. Again, I had the stupid decision to keep him on the bench in my fantasy team this week again. What a great decision from me. He scored the late winner against United last week, and he scored once again a pretty crucial goal against one of the top teams in the league at the Emirates. And Arsenal dropping points for the first time this season, the only goal they've conceded in the league this campaign. To the G-Tech Community Stadium as Brentford got back to winning ways after defeat at Anfield last week. They're back to home, and they've made it 2 wins from 2 to start the season at home. Their second league win of the season, as I said, both coming at home. Southampton looking pretty hopeless again in the Premier League. 3 defeats in consecutive weekends for Southampton. for them under Russell Martin. They did get a goal this week, ultimately after losing both of their previous games by 1-0 scorelines. It was 3-1 yesterday. Brian Mbeumo opened the scoring in the first half for Brentford. Brian Mbeumo then doubled Brentford's lead for his second before Johan Visa scored the third. It was dead and buried really before Yukinari Sugawara got Southampton a consolation at the very least out of that one in the 95th minute. To get Southampton's first league goal of the season, and that was to be that for Southampton. Russell Martin, again, his side could have prevented a number of those goals, playing out from the back, albeit stubborn in his insistence that Southampton play that type of football. But if you're going to make silly mistakes and not have the quality to play that type of football, you're going to get caught out week in, week out, and Brentford, one of the best pressing sides in the league, will certainly punish you. Everton had an absolute collapse at Goodison Park. They were record breakers yesterday. Not the record they would have wanted to their name, but record breakers nonetheless. Michael Keane, soonly followed by Dominic Calvert-Lewin, got Everton's first 2 goals of the campaign after failing to score in their first 2 league games of the season, making their worst start to a campaign in history. They did get their first goal in August under Sean Dyche, and they got 2 of them in a matter of 7 minutes. But when it just looked like a couple of minutes before full time that Everton were going to see it through for the 3 points, Bournemouth had a little glimmer of hope as Antoine Semenyo's goal at 3 minutes from time, 3 minutes from the 90th minute, got Bournemouth back into the game. Lewis Cook then with a diving header in the 92nd minute got Bournemouth level before Luis Sinisterra completed the comeback for Bournemouth in the 96th minute, sealing the 3 points for the Cherries at Goodison. It now means it was the latest comeback from any side in Premier League history when being 2-0 down. 87th minute, in the last 12 minutes of that game, Bournemouth found their way back into it. An incredible comeback for Andone Iraola's side. I'm on a way to get your first win of the season after they drew their first 2 games of the campaign. Bournemouth. Speaking of first points, Ipswich got their first point of the season against Fulham yesterday at Portman Road. A wonderful goal by Liam Delap inside the first 15 minutes gave Ipswich the lead. Adama Traore then levelled for Fulham, and Ipswich were threatening and pushing at the start of the second half for a second, but it wasn't to be for Ipswich on the day. Ultimately, a point apiece between Ipswich and Fulham, and it gets the newly promoted side off the bottom of the table, off the mark to start the season, heading into the international break with a point out of 9. Tough start though, because they did play Liverpool and Man City in that run. To be honest, Leicester still only on 1 point. After that point was gathered on the first match week, they still remain on that 1 point. Amadou Onana got Aston Villa in front at the King Power Stadium. John Duran then doubled Villa's lead before Facundo Buonanotte got Leicester back into it. Leicester pushing for a late equaliser, but again they couldn't find that crucial second goal and ultimately fall to another 2-1 defeat in consecutive weekends in that one. Nottingham Forest continue their unbeaten start to the season against a Wolves side who hadn't a point coming into the game before kick-off. Nottingham Forest took the lead through Chris Wood before John Rickner Bellegarde, just 2 minutes after Forest had taken the lead, had Wolves back level. That was to be the decisive goals and the only goals of the game at the City Ground, as Forest remain unbeaten in the league to start the campaign. 1 win and 2 draws for Forest. Wolves without a win, but a singular point on the board after their first 3 games. Speaking of wins, Manchester City made it 3 out of 3 to start the campaign, and you go to guess, they've scored 3 goals, and you can guess who scored all 3 of them. Erling Haaland with his back-to-back hat-tricks in the Premier League. For Manchester City, they keep their 100% record. It's Erling Haaland's 8th Premier League hat-trick and second in as many weeks. West Ham made some simple mistakes that could have avoided those goals being conceded, but they have suffered back-to-back home defeats under Julian Lopetegui after their winning output away at Crystal Palace last weekend for the Hammers. And this afternoon, we are watching Chelsea take on Palace and Newcastle take on Tottenham, where both home sides are leading by 1-0 at the break. Chelsea lead through Nicholas Jackson, and Newcastle leading through Harvey Barnes. The second half, by the way, coming up very shortly. Just confirming the result from the Old Firm. Celtic make it 4 wins out of 4 to start the season and still yet to concede in the Scottish Premiership. 4 clean sheets to start the campaign for Brendan Rodgers' side, who sit joint top of the table ahead of Aberdeen on goal difference. Both sides have made very good starts to the campaign. Rangers in third on 7 points. Celtic winning by 3-0. Right, we'll be getting to the second half at St James's Park very shortly, but a lot to tell you what's coming up here on LFS throughout the next few days and weeks. We start this afternoon as Manchester United take on Liverpool at 4 o'clock this afternoon. A reigniting of an old rivalry of English football, one of the best rivalries in English football and probably world football, reignited this afternoon, 4 o'clock. Before that is our final domestic game before the international break, as we will see the international break get underway. The Nations League campaign gets underway this week on Thursday night. It's been a joyous day for Celtic fans in Scotland, in action at Hampden Park on Thursday night as we watch Scotland take on Poland on Thursday at 7:45, amongst other games as well in the mix there. And then after the international break, we have a return of the best competition in Europe, the best international competition in Europe. It is the Champions League. Returns in a new format, as we say, and we start with a double header on Tuesday the 17th of September. The early kickoff sees Aston Villa, their first Champions League or European Cup game since they won it back in 1982, and they take on Young Boys. Young Boys against Aston Villa is a 5:45 kickoff on the 17th, and followed by Arne Slot's first involvement in Champions League football for Liverpool, and Liverpool back in the competition after a year of absence, and they head to San Siro to take on AC Milan at 8 o'clock on the 17th. And that is the start of what would be a 4-match week in the Champions League that week. Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday of that week, all comprising of Champions League fixtures. So lots to look forward to. The second half, by the way, of the Premier League games between Chelsea and Crystal Palace and Newcastle Spurs is on the way next. Do stay with us.
Catch me if I fall.
Welcome back to LFS for the second half of our first Premier League commentary of the afternoon, as we watch Newcastle take on Tottenham at St James's Park, where it is Harvey Barnes' goal separating the two sides at the break. Chelsea leading Crystal Palace by a goal to nil in that London derby, also kicking off at 1:30, and Nicholas Jackson's goal separating the two London sides there. And we'll keep you updated with some other scores around the grounds if we think that anything interesting is going to happen. As I said, don't forget 4 o'clock, Manchester United Liverpool. We're getting team news from that one in around 10 to 15 minutes time, so do stay with us because we will bring you team news as soon as it drops here on LFS this afternoon. The second half is about to get underway here at St James's Park. The second half is underway now between Chelsea and Crystal Palace, so we'll bring you that. Don't forget to like, subscribe and turn on post notifications if you haven't done so already here on LFS. Be greatly appreciated. Still very early in the season. We'll have so much to bring you right the way throughout the campaign. And the Champions League is back, the Europa League returns, and international football as well, equally. So lots and lots to bring you over the next coming days and weeks. It looks like Spurs are going to make a change at the break, because Brennan Johnson is ready on the sidelines. And something clear from Ange Postecoglou, where he feels that his side need to do something different at half-time, because it has been a display where I've thought Spurs have been a bit slow, they have been a bit laboured at times in their attacking football, albeit they've had more shots than Newcastle. But at the end of the day, it's not just about having the shots, it's about being effective with them. And so far, I think Spurs really haven't massively tested the Newcastle goal as much as probably what they could have. But that doesn't mean that it's not going to be an easy result in the end for Newcastle, very much not. But we will see, of course. Brennan Johnson is ready on the sidelines, ready to be introduced at the head of the second half. The players just returning to the fields for the second period. Papsar is going to be coming off. So Papsar, who had both of Spurs' shots on target in the first half, is going to be coming off. It looks like Spurs might have a slight tweaking of what they're going to do. We'll figure that out as it goes along, as Brennan Johnson is on and Papsar is now off. So one swap at half-time. Newcastle unchanged from the first half, as you would probably expect, as they're ready to get us back underway then. Newcastle leading, but only narrowly. There's still very much time for Spurs to get back into this one, to get back on terms as we get underway for the second half. Newcastle kicking from right to left, and Spurs left to right in this second half. Here's Bissouma. Trying to actually figure out what Tottenham are doing. It looks like they might go to a 4-2-4. Is that right? As Brennan Johnson plays it through to Son, and now Kulishevsky tried to play it through for Madison. It's kept in by Livramento. Now Audebert chasing him, but Livramento breaks past his man. Now he tries to get Newcastle on the counter as Isak made the run in behind, but he was acres offside there. There was no question that he was in an offside position when that ball was played, and that attack comes to a pretty quick conclusion. It looks like Spurs are playing a 4-2-4 times. They've got two centre forwards in Son and Kulishevsky, and then Audebert off the right, Audebert off the left, sorry, and Brennan Johnson off the right. As Newcastle running behind, Isak's gone in behind this time. The flag stayed down. Isak taken out, but the challenge was good from Dragoshin. Isak incensed that it was a penalty, but the referee says no. Of course, VAR would have had will have a look at it if there is any mistake there, as Madison tries to square it across. Guimaraes hooks it away, only as far as Bissouma. Threads it through the lines, finds Porro in a half space now, tries to play it across the box. Porro still in there as Kulishevsky back to Porro, across and all the way through. Spurs trying to throw bodies at the ball, but none of them could get a definitive touch. They're certainly coming out with a lot of intent at the start of this second half, our Tottenham, and that is a formation change, one for Newcastle to try and get used to, as there's going to be a free kick and a yellow card going against Yves Bissouma here, as he was pulling back his opponents. Just see it again. Yeah, they do really well in Porro and Kulishevsky. Just nice link up in between the lines, and I think maybe it was a bit too easy from a Newcastle point of view, but in the same sense, you would have to argue that, you know, it was good play by Spurs. Really intricate football, fast, pacey, quick passing. I said it was their big threat from that first half they could be threatening from, was when they moved the ball quicker and with pace and pass and move. They really did look threatening in combinations, but It's kind of been individuals that have tried to get Spurs forward for the majority of that first half. And already in the second half, we've already seen more combinations and more good combined attacking football from the team, as Kulishevsky now finds Brennan Johnson. Johnson off the right. Lots of Newcastle bodies as he cuts it back to Porro. Now Bissouma. Madison. Back to Bissouma. Out to the left to Udogie. And now Audebert. Up against Livramento. Audebert back to Udogie. Now Bissouma. Patience from Spurs as they play it around the box of Newcastle, waiting for an opening. Johnson. Porro. Now Madison again. Not the best of touches, but he does keep the ball, does James Madison. Bissouma under pressure, gets it nicked away from him, and Gordon on the break. Surrounded by 4 players. He's not going to get past the Spurs players that time round. He wanted a foul, but the referee says no. And I think he's right in that one, is the referee. That wasn't a foul on Anthony Gordon, just run into a crowd of bodies, really. It's good play from Spurs. Risky, but they've got the quality to take those risks and to try some things. As they try and squeeze it in behind the lines again for Son, but well closed out by Byrne, who clears his lines. Very positive start to the second half for the visitors. They've tried to capitalise upon this formation change, this little tweak they made at half time, trying to catch Newcastle cold, and so far it's pretty joyous, but sooner rather than later Newcastle will certainly get to grips with it. This is why this period of time is so important for Spurs to try and get back on terms. This little slight advantage they have at the moment over Newcastle in that sense. Madison out and round the corner, finds Audebert. Lovely through ball from Audebert, finding the run of Udogie, but well charged out, and the flag was up against Destiny Udogie. We've seen Destiny Udogie just make those infield underlapping runs into the half space, into that little channel between the left winger and the centre forward, and just breaking into that little gap. And we've seen Destiny Udogie do it with a lot of kind of success previously for Spurs, and on that occasion just caught himself offside. Couldn't get back onside quick enough there. There's a few Newcastle players warming up on the sidelines. Tonali is one of them. And the Newcastle fans have a banner for Sandro Tonali in the stands here this afternoon, after he could make his first Premier League appearance in 10 months. Since October. Almost 11 months now. Since October of last year. We'll see if he does enter the fray at some point. I'm sure he will. As we have a goal to tell you about at Stamford Bridge. And Chelsea did take the lead, but Oliver Glasner's Crystal Palace have responded at the start of the second half. Chelsea come out the better of the two teams, but it's Crystal Palace that have struck first in the second period, and it is Abere Eza that has got Crystal Palace back on terms at Stamford Bridge. Another tight affair, it seems, in that London derby. Crystal Palace back on terms. Chelsea 1, Palace 1. And they are a couple of minutes ahead of us here, so they're a bit further into the second half. Not by much, but slightly further into the second half than anyone else. A few new faces here for Newcastle. The new sporting director, Paul Mitchell, watching on. And he was actually the head of recruitment at Tottenham for 2 years, back in 2014. And he did bring that man into the club. Heung-min Son, what a signing he was for Tottenham. He's been there almost a decade now as the Spurs captain. A real true servant to the club. Here's Udogie. Now Kulishevsky. Scored 2 last week, Heung-min Son. He would love to add one here this afternoon. Here's Brennan Johnson's cross deflected. And the shot over the bar by Audebert. All he had to do was tap it, and it would have been 1-1. but he got too much power behind it. Really nice ball out to Brennan Johnson, whose cross maybe fortunately takes a deflection off Lloyd Kelly, and it just goes drifting to the back post, dipping for Odebear, and he just catches it with kind of his to the top of his leg in a sense, and it just goes flying over the bar. He had to adjust Odebear, just couldn't adjust in the right sense to find that definitive shot on target. But Spurs certainly much more threatening at the start of this second half. Newcastle at the moment struggling to get to grips with it. As Kulishevsky tried to find Son, again well closed down by Byrne. And now Nick Pope goes long. It's another one of those little periods where Newcastle just have to stay in the game and don't allow Tottenham to get a goal. And only 2%, this is incredible, 2% of the possession has been in Spurs' defensive third in the last 5 minutes. It's been one-way traffic for the start of the second half, as here comes Son again for Tottenham. They've got bodies forward, and Son's shot goes deflected for a corner. And such a good opportunity. Lots of bodies up the field for Tottenham, 5 to be exact, including Son. And Newcastle get Dan Byrne, who slides in front of it. The Son shot is the deflection of the crossbar. Goodness me. Madison, they're getting closer. Bissouma, now Porro. Kulishevsky. You can feel the nervousness inside the stadium from the Newcastle fans that Spurs are getting closer. That's a wasteful touch by Isak, a poor touch in the end, as ball bouncing around as Porro picks it up and gets Spurs on the front foot again. Spun out to the left hand side for Madison, trying to find someone in the box, wants to go himself, palmed out, Nick Pope and into the net. An own goal from Dan Byrne. An absolute calamity of errors from Newcastle, and Spurs do have their leveller. Although goodness me, that's dreadful. Dreadful. But it's exactly what Spurs have deserved in this second half. Down the left hand side comes Madison, chops onto his right, and he takes the strike. It just parried by Nick Pope. I mean, why? He's done it twice in the game. Pap Sarr had 2 shots on target in the first half, and Nick Pope just decides to parry it. Has he got butterfingers? He's a goalkeeper. Catch the ball. The ball comes bundling out, and I think it might have been Brennan Johnson at the back post. Just slides it across, and Dan Byrne can't do anything about it. It goes into his own net, but there's nothing he can do to deny it. The power on it just comes off him. But that is all on the Newcastle keeper, because that is dreadful goalkeeping. Similar to the Pap Sarr shot in the first half. James Maddison's shot didn't have much kind of power or pace behind it. It wasn't an unsavable, it wasn't uncatchable from a Newcastle's point of view. And Nick Pope, again, just bundling it into the 6-yard box. Baffling. Spurs take the corner. Short this time. Porro to deliver, and it's headed away by Kelly. Out for a throw at Newcastle, really under the cosh now, and if they're not careful they could find themselves behind and really out of this game if they don't get to grips with it sooner rather than later. But I mean, that equalising goal has been coming for the whole of this second half. Spurs have come out a different animal in this second half and should at least be level, if not further, if not ahead, as Madison wins it back well. Madison checking his way through the lines, and he ends up on the floor and on the end of a free kick, and Bruno Guimaraes giving away the free kick and getting the yellow card. I think Newcastle have just lost their composure at the minute. They're a bit frustrated and a bit kind of tetchy at the moment. They're not winning their battles, they're not winning their duels at the moment, and it's where Spurs are just getting that slight edge on them. And that's really good play by Madison. He just rolls the ball away, knows the challenge is coming, and just waits for it to happen, really, as the ball's already well gone. And Newcastle really having to hang on in there at this moment in time. And now, this is a good free kick in a good area for Tottenham. And they've got a good set piece taker in James Madison, amongst others, who will fancy their chances. Pedro Porro is there as well. Romero and Basuma, I don't know if they're going to be taking it. Looks like Porro is the most focused. Madison's there as well, as I said. Very central, by 25 yards or so out from goal. Porro and Madison staring down at the ball. It's Porro to take over the bar. Not too far away from Pedro Porro, but that time just a maybe, just didn't dip in time. Got over the wall well enough, just didn't dip. And if it dipped just enough, it would have went into that top corner, but just narrowly high and wide there by the finest of margins. As there's an issue here for Nick Pope, who's gone down, so that's not a good sign. For Newcastle, who lost Nick Pope for the vast majority of last season through injury. They're already going to make a change anyway, Newcastle. So whether this is just Nick Pope trying to waste a bit of time, who knows? We do have another game to come up for you a bit later on this afternoon, as I mentioned. Manchester United against Liverpool. A 4 o'clock kickoff for you from Old Trafford. As the two rivals meet up once again. Liverpool looking to keep a hold of their 100% record. Manchester United beat Liverpool on match day 3 of the season 2 seasons ago. They would love to repeat that scoreline and that result again this afternoon. We will get team news as soon as I get it for you. I am just trying to source that at the moment. There is a break and play, by the way, here, so you're not missing out on anything at St James's Park for the moment. And Newcastle are going to make a substitution here. So Newcastle looking for a switch. It's going to be Jacob Murphy that's coming on. And he's going to replace Harvey Barnes. The goal scorer for Newcastle is off. Jacob Murphy is on. To be honest, I think maybe a bit harsh on Harvey Barnes. I don't think I've seen any of the front three of Newcastle very much in this second half at all. In Gordon, Isak or Barnes. And it was probably a toss-up between any of the three of them who would have been coming on. Joe Linton went down there. Just getting back to his feet. And last season, Spurs benefited the joint most from opponent own goals. 6 own goals scored in Spurs' favour last season. Liverpool also 6 as well on that list. So both sides benefiting from the opponents putting it into their own net. And quite ironically, Liverpool did concede an own goal against Spurs last season in that one. So those two have history with own goals in terms of benefiting from them. We do have, I do believe we have team news. I still haven't got the teams in with me. As soon as I get them from Old Trafford, I will give you them. As Johnson cuts it across for Spurs, but the cutback easily taken away by Longstaff. And now it's all about Newcastle getting back into the game as that's a poor pass. Here's Madison. Back to a doggy. poor pass by Newcastle. Just as I said, they need to get on the front foot. They need to get up the field. They've really been barely out of their own half in the second half at all. That's a lovely ball out to Brennan Johnson again, adding the width and getting the corner off Lloyd Kelly. Did Brennan Johnson. Really good play by the Spurs man, who did come on at half time. I do have the team news from Old Trafford. I'll get to that in a moment after this corner. And some interesting team news for Manchester United rather than Liverpool in that sense. Here's Kulishevsky. The ball back with Madison. Madison to lift it in. A bit wayward as it's headed away by Isak, but back brought down by Udogie. And Bissouma tried to squeeze through that time, but well closed out. It's Porro in a bit of a tussle here with Isak, does well. And Porro gets it back to the defender there, Udogie. Now Vicario, who we've seen barely involved in the action so far. In this second half, definitely, but that's lovely. Well won by Odebear. Intensity to win the ball. Here comes Kulishevsky. Now Brennan Johnson. Spurs linking up, but Brennan Johnson's cross straight into the hands of Nick Pope, who could catch the ball that time. Team news then, as I said, from Old Trafford. Andre Onana starts in goal for United. Mazraoui, De Ligt, Martinez and Dallo, the back four. Casemiro and Mainu in midfield. Fernandes in the 10. Garnacho off the right. Rashford off the left. And Xerxes leading the line. For Liverpool, they're unchanged from their 2-0 win at home against Brentford last week. Alisson in goal, Alexander-Arnold, Konate, Van Dijk and Robertson the back four. At midfield from Gravenberch and McAllister, with Szoboszlai in the 10. Off the right, Salah. Off the left, Diaz and Diogo Jota leading the line. For Liverpool, Federico Chiesa is not in the squad this afternoon after Arne Slot said that he wouldn't want to risk him for this week. He said it was unlikely for him to be in the squad, but you never rule it out, and he hasn't made it for this one. But that is not to say that he's injured or anything like that. He did only sign 3 days ago, and he was not going to be involved this weekend. Wants to get him into training. Of course, he's not called up for the internationals either, Federico Chiesa, so we'll have a good few weeks to train with the Liverpool team before he does make his first appearance for the club. But that's not to be today. As here come Newcastle, their first real attack of the half. Here's Gordon, now finds Murphy, who forces a big save off Vicario. And the substitute for Newcastle starting to cause an impact. It's again their first real breakaway forward of the half. Nice ball to Isak, who lays it off to Anthony Gordon, who flicks it round the corner. And the overlapping Murphy, narrow on that left-hand side, in a tight angle, just tries to squeeze it past Vicario. And Vicario does well to smother the ball out for a corner. So a corner for Newcastle. Right footed delivery by Gordon. Headed away by Bissouma. Gordon will recover it though on the left flank. This comes back to Livramento. Now Byrne. Longstaff. Back to Nick Pope. Tries to go long. But again, Spurs there to intercept through Porro. Porro darts it down the right hand side for Kulishevsky now. Looking for options does Dejan Kulishevsky. Cuts it back now, Porro. Across to Madison, back to Kulishevsky on the right. Again, eking his way into the box as that's cut away from Brennan Johnson, and that's a cynical challenge by James Madison. And that's a yellow card for the Spurs man. Pretty cynical one on Bruno Guimaraes. And James Madison returning the favour from a bit earlier on, and he gets his first booking of the season. Does the Spurs man. But the applause around St James's Park at the moment, because they are applauding the return of what could be a talisman at this football club, Sandro Tonali, making his first Premier League appearance in over 10 months after his suspension. And he is back in the Premier League in Newcastle colours again. And off the bench this afternoon to try and lead Newcastle to victory. Also coming on is Lewis Hall. At that point, Lloyd Kelly and Sean Longstaff replaced. Tonali and Hall on in their places. Let's see then. Pope goes long. Just over 20 minutes to go with this one. Newcastle 1, Spurs 1. In the balance here at St James's Park. But Spurs probably arguably should be ahead with the chances they've had in the second half. But Newcastle, as I said, have hung on in there and kept it level pegging for the moment. Can they get back into the game themselves, the home side? Here's Guimaraes. Charged down by Madison. And it's an unnecessary one to give away as Son through the middle now. Plays it down the left for Audebert. Audebert wants to go himself, but run out of pitch room. And rolled for a goal kick. Well covered over by Emil Kraft that time. And wins Newcastle the goal kick out of that one. It's a silly giveaway again by Guimaraes in the midfield. Closed down by Madison, who played it through to Son. And Son found Audebert. But Audebert couldn't get past Emil Kraft. Stalwart defending from the centre-back of Newcastle. It's Hall to take this through in for the home side. Oh, that's loose again from Newcastle. Audebert! Shot deflected, corner. Dan Burn again throwing his body on the line there for Newcastle. He's everywhere. He's been everywhere for them this afternoon. Even putting it into his own net. He's been all over the place. He's been absolutely in every single moment defensively for Newcastle. But Spurs have missed some pretty good chances. Pretty big scoreable opportunities, and have gone a begging time after time as Kulishevsky to deliver. Left-footed corner to the back post, headed on and headed wide by Radu Dragushin. Well, Newcastle have won 3 of the last 4 Premier League meetings with Tottenham, as many as in their last 13. 2 draws and 8 defeats in the last 13. Other than that, 3 of their last 5 league victories against Tottenham have been by at least a 4-goal margin. I mentioned that before the game. The last 3 games between the sides have seen the winner, ultimately, win by more than 3 goals. As Kulishevsky breaks this one down. Now Audebert off the left. Back to Kulishevsky in the box. Well closed out as Tonali comes away with the ball. Murphy. Going to find Tonali down that right flank, and he's bundled over there by Yves Bissouma. And it's a free kick to Newcastle. Well, Tottenham, meanwhile, have lost their last 2 Premier League away games at Newcastle by an aggregate scoreline of 10-1. They'd only lost 2 of their previous 11 such visits to St James's Park previously than that. 6 wins and 3 draws in that time. And the last meeting, as I said, between the sides ended back in April, ended in a humiliating defeat for Tottenham, who were thumped 4-0 after a brace from Isak and goals from Anthony Gordon and Fabian Schär. That's a free kick for Newcastle on the halfway line. Pumped up the fields. Byrne with the first header. Joe Linton tried to follow suit, but Gordon tried to flick it round the corner for Isak, but stumbled away there and seen out of play by Spurs. As Hall takes the throw quickly for Newcastle. A bit more intent about them, although that's poor from Gordon. A few loose giveaways, and that's a lovely bit of skill from Brennan Johnson. He's got Son along there, and Brennan Johnson's cross cleared behind by Bruno Guimaraes. Corner. Again, that's about 3 times in the last 5 minutes that Newcastle calm possession in their own half, and they just give it away cheaply. I mean, they should be out of sight, Tottenham, with the chances they've had, but it just doesn't seem to go for them. The last touch, the last pass, the last moment of the attack just doesn't seem to go right for them at the minute. And a corner taken short by Spurs. Porro across to Bissouma. Back to Porro. Around the corner to Kulishevsky. Closed out by Gordon, but the referee's just going to pull it back here for a free kick, I believe. It is a free kick. Foul on Pedro Porro. And Murphy was the man that committed that foul. As Spurs going to make a change here. Timo Werner is going to be coming on. And Wilson Odobert is going to be making way. So Odobert off and Timo Werner on. So some fresh legs in the Spurs attack. Try and see them over the line. There's Porro over this one then for Tottenham. Won the free kick, will take it. Can he find a teammate? Porro, ready to take. Right footed delivery, it's deep to the back post. Flicked on by Newcastle defender there. And Livramento Son sends it to the opposite side. And cleared away is Maddison. What a save by Pope. Fabulous effort by James Maddison, but denied by a very good save by Nick Pope. This one he had to parry. There's no catching that one. Tonali just bounced off Tonali into the path of Maddison. It was just a whipped curler from Maddison. Left footed, curling towards the top of the net, and Nick Pope came striding across in full stretch, palmed it behind for the corner. Spurs back on the front foot pushing. The corner comes in, headed away by Newcastle. Bissouma recycles as Porro over the bar. It did take a touch. Will be another corner to Tottenham. Just see that, I think he didn't really need to touch it, Nick Pope, but maybe he felt a bit uncertain whether it would dip at the last second. But corner it is for Tottenham. James Maddison to take. I can feel a sense of something here, Spurs, at the moment. Maybe they could. Maddison to deliver. Flicked away by Byrne. Brought down by Bissouma. In the box again. Here's Son off the left. Keeps the ball. Passes it off to Werner. Now through to Porro. Porro again wants to shoot. But now it's Brennan Johnson who's hit it high and wide from a very good position. Did really well in the tight space, Johnson, to switch his feet and get him himself set up for the shot. But as he takes it, he just kind of leans back slightly, I would say. See it again. Takes it down really well onto his left foot. And as he goes to take the strike, he kind of has his foot in the air and he side foots it well over the bar. That's another good chance for Spurs. And they're not going to get many more good chances like that. And they've already had quite a number of them. But there's also a threat at the other ends that they have to try and fend off as well. At the same time, Spurs, Newcastle aren't dead and buried in this at all. No doubt about that. As here's Murphy. Try to break away from Romero. Wins the corner, does Jacob Murphy. Gets applause from the home crowd. Less than 15 minutes to go. By the way, we haven't updated yet from Stamford Bridge as of recently. They're into the last 10 minutes. It's Chelsea 1, Crystal Palace 1. So similar scoreline. Same scoreline that it is here. It is what it is in that London derby. Update you if anything changes there. Gordon to take this corner for Newcastle. Right footed delivery. Looping into the box. And Spurs get the first connection to clear it away. And that shot from Murphy's charged down well as Spurs hoof it up the field through Porro. But there's only Newcastle players in the surrounding area as Livramento heads back to his keeper. Pope comfortably there. Hall. Joe Linton. Is there time? Will there be a winner? The last time there was a draw in this fixture, as I'll wait and tell you that in a moment, because Jacob Murphy's broke in behind for Newcastle, and it's a tap in for Alexander Isak. Counter-attacking football, the ball in behind for Murphy, and Isak running alongside him, And Murphy decided not to shoot, decided to square it for the easiest tap-in for Alexander Isak. And Newcastle, who've been under the cosh for the vast majority of this second half, have retaken the lead. And it's their star striker, Alexander Isak, who scored a brace against Spurs in April. He's got on the score sheet that could be a crucial goal to give Newcastle 3 points. It's Joe Linton breaking away, and he just plays a lovely ball in behind. Murphy in acres of space on the periphery of the back line, and Isak well onside, there's no doubts. But it was the question of whether Murphy would shoot or square it across. He took the smart option, the unselfish option, and decided to give his mate a goal. One of the easiest that Alexander Isak will score in his career. And it could be immensely crucial for Newcastle in securing 3 points in another game where they've certainly not been on top, where they haven't been convincingly the better side. But I've said it time and time again for Newcastle this season, they will not care one bit whether they've dominated a game or not. What matters is that they are going to remain unbeaten and could be getting another 3 points here in a game where, as I said, they've been pretty much second best, especially in this second half. Newcastle 2, Tottenham 1. But again, from a Spurs point of view, I mean, they look very open at the back there. There was no kind of communication between the defence as to, oh, there's 2 runners in behind, someone track him, somebody stop this, somebody close it off, somebody get across. But there was just gaps, big gaps in between the defenders, and you were begging for Newcastle to put a ball in behind. It was obvious and very disappointing, I would say, from a Spurs point of view, to give away such pretty an easy goal. Very avoidable. But at the end of the day, they can only really blame themselves that they haven't got more than 1 goal on the day, Spurs, because they've had, as I said, multiple opportunities to get into the lead and to really put Newcastle to the sword. But again, similar to the game against Leicester away from home, just lacked the clinical finishing at all today. They've been creating chances galore in the second half, but their finishing ability's gone to pot in the second half completely. It's just not been there. That's something Spurs really need to fix sooner rather than later, especially in away games. At home they look unbothered so far, albeit against an Everton side who have been pretty hopeless to start the campaign. But when a team has asked them questions, Spurs, they've been stumbling at times. And now Newcastle want to add a third to really take the game out of Spurs' reach. But Gordon gives away a cheap ball there as Porro tried to feed it into midfield for Maddison, who was closed down. But Spurs do win the ball and win a free kick off Sandro Tonali. And Spurs get the free kick there through Yves Bissouma. And Spurs going to make a double change at the moment, so Ange Postecoglou feels fresh legs are needed to try and rescue his side at least a point out of this one. As Bergvall is come on for Maddison, Lucas Bergvall, and Yves Bissouma is replaced by Rodrigo Bentancur. So Bentancur and Bergvall on, replacing Maddison and Bissouma for Tottenham. Can Spurs get back on terms? They've done it once. Could they do it a second time? Or will Newcastle lock tight and see them out this time round? Spurs have had problems at breaking down Newcastle this afternoon, but in the second half they've been much more energetic as Kulusevski looked to cut it back there. Bergvall was the threat as Porro wins it back. Now Bentancur. Werner now. Across from a Dougie. Cleared away in there by Joe Linton. And a throw in for Spurs on the left hand side. 7 minutes plus additional time to go. Less time to go at Stamford Bridge between Chelsea and Palace. It looks like it'll be a point apiece unless either side can have a late say there with 4 minutes to go. Here's Johnson, try to flick it on for Porro, but cleared away, and now Anthony Gordon wants to get on the counter. Try to get the afterburners on there, but ended up on the floor. And a challenge there from, I think it was Bentancur maybe, or yeah, it was Rodrigo Bentancur who gets a yellow card for that challenge on Gordon. I mean, he knew he was never going to get the ball. Yeah. So a free kick and a yellow card. He doesn't get the ball, Rodrigo Bentancur. Not that that's an effective kind of excuse for the situation. It's just, it is a yellow card. No doubt about that. Let's see. Lewis Hall over this free kick for Newcastle. Third goal would certainly take it out of the question of the result, but at 2-1, Spurs can still scrape a leveler late on as Lewis Hall sent it down the line. Isak trying to win a corner, but runs out of room there against Pedro Porro. Goal kick to Tottenham. Tried something, it didn't work, and ultimately they end up with a goal, a throw-in actually. That's strange. It must have went out of play before Isak got on the ball. That was pretty delayed, that decision. That's good effort from Joe Linton, who steals the ball away from Spurs. Here's Isak. Try to get it across, but couldn't do so. The shot blocked. It will go out for a Newcastle corner, though. That was much better from Newcastle all of a sudden there. Real intensity from Joe Linton, breaking up that little Spurs trio that were getting involved from the throw-in, and just intercepted it, played it across to Isak, who tried to square it across the box, but well blocked by Spurs, and goes out for the Newcastle corner, which Anthony Gordon will take. Corner from Gordon, headed across the box but cleared away from a Spurs point of view as Gordon picks it up again for Newcastle. This time hooks it forward, but no one there from his team threatening. Bergvall. Romero. Time running out for Spurs here. That's a lovely ball by Romero, though. Finding Pedro Porro. Breaking into the spaces. Finds Bergvall now as Newcastle retreat. Down the left it comes to Werner. Back in field to Bentancur. A doggy. Bentancur again. Now Werner. Son trying to help out with the build-up, but Newcastle's defence rigid as they clear it away, only as far as Kulishevsky. Back with Brennan Johnson as Kulishevsky delivers. Headed away that time. Back there by Murphy, I believe, that got across that time as Gordon does well against Kulishevsky and wins the free kick. Yeah. I mean, pushing and shoving from both players there, but Gordon does end up on the ground, so argue that that was a foul, and the referee agreed. As I said, don't forget another Premier League offering for you a bit later on, and around 40 minutes time. Kick-off at Old Trafford between Manchester United and Liverpool, 4 o'clock here in LFS. Don't want to miss that one. Not long after this stream then, so do stay tuned. We'll hand you straight over to the stream for the Old Trafford game as soon as this one ends, and we'll be live about 10 to 4, 3:50. As Son tries to dart it in behind, Werner on the run. Nick Pope backpedaling into his own area, as here's Werner off the right, goes down, but a good challenge by Byrne is why he went down. Very good challenge by Dan Byrne, who has scored an own goal today, but every other bit of defending has been impeccable from the Newcastle centre-back, and it will be a corner. Fine line to walk with those challenges, because any sort of contact on the attacker and it's a penalty, but he got it well as Bergvall delivers for Spurs. A bit low. This will be a throw in here as Rodrigo Bentancur headed off a Newcastle player, so a throw into Spurs. Bergvall will take. As Porro back to Bergvall. Bentancur now tries to find a bit of room for a doggy. Werner off the left. Back with Romero. Last minute of the 90. We'll see how long will be added on at the end of the 90 minutes here. If there is enough time for Spurs to get a second leveller of the day. Here's Romero. Bentancur, not much room to break into at the moment as Newcastle 5-4-1 in their deep shape. Just waiting for Spurs to try and come at them, to close them down and see them away. Stubborn and rigid defending from Newcastle at the moment. Hard to break down. The Spurs try carve through the middle. Again headed away by Byrne, and Kraft helped out as Joelinton loses the ball. Spurs win it back. 90 minutes are up. And 5 more minutes to go. 5 in the first half, 5 in the second half. 5 minutes for Spurs to rescue a draw. 5 minutes for Newcastle to hold on for the 3 points as Spurs get a bit loose in their passing. And now Newcastle have a counter. This could finish it. Here's Anthony Gordon. Doesn't want to go for a goal. Just wants to keep Newcastle up the field. Smart play that, as Newcastle win a free kick there. Bruno Guimaraes fouled. As he jeers up the crowd, does Bruno Guimaraes. And the Newcastle captain epitomising passion for the badge. And Bruno Guimaraes just trying to see it through for them. Newcastle have the ball in the right area of the fields to try and see this one through. Certainly not throwing everybody at this one, our Newcastle. They're having a few bodies up the field, but it's not all out attack from the home side, as you can imagine at this late stage with such a narrow scoreline. Gordon and Hall over it. Anthony Gordon, right-footed delivery deep to the back post, easily gathered by Vicario. This could be Spurs' chance if they can do it, as Vicario doesn't have a breakaway option for him. Romero. Dragoshin. Spurs need to get the ball up the field quickly. 3 minutes of the 5 to go. Ball over the top. Here's Brennan Johnson on the run. He's got Son in the middle. Looks to go across goal, but Son waited for the cutback. Brennan Johnson went across the 6-yard box with his cross. And a miscommunication there between Johnson and Son sees Newcastle saved a bit of a scare there from a Spurs counter. And Postecoglou looks on longingly. Flick on there. Bergvall tries to play it off to Bentancur as Newcastle absolutely rifle that one out for a throw. Bruno Guimaraes there. Throw into Newcastle. As each second ticks away, they get ever closer to another 3 points at home. Their second home win in a row. Their second win of the season. And a continuation of their unbeaten start. Spurs, who also are unbeaten to start the campaign, that record could be coming to an end unless they have a bit of late drama here. Because here comes Kulusevski. And he tries to find Werner, but just cut it behind him as Livramento got in the way. And that's just a silly, naive challenge by Brennan Johnson, which sees his manager look to the skies in disbelief. And that's a bit naive, but well won by Bruno Guimaraes, who's played this fabulously in the last few minutes, winning those little free kicks to just eke out a few extra seconds of the clock to try and get Newcastle over the line. Game management at its finest there from Bruno Guimaraes. 8 added minutes at Stamford Bridge. They played 6.5, so a minute and a half to go there. Similarly to here, and it is still 1-1 between Chelsea and Crystal Palace. Is there going to be late drama in that London derby, or will Palace get their first points of the season? We will see as we enter the final minute here at St James's Park. Ball goes long from Nick Pope, but couldn't be kept in there by Almiron, who's just come on the field for Newcastle. Ball's flicked on by Dragoshin, but Spurs just struggling to keep the ball up the field as that's hooked forward by Porro. Hooked away by Murphy. Back with Porro. Newcastle fans wanted a handball there, but the referee moved as Vicario pumps it forward. One last hopeful chance as Joe Linton does incredibly well to head it clear of danger. And back into Spurs' half. It's now do or die moments for Tottenham. Now or never. Seconds ticking down. One last chance maybe. Vicario to Dragoshin. He has to get this forward. Pumped up the field. And Newcastle had it clear, but only as far as Bergvall. Now Werner. Werner keeps it alive. Squares it across to Bentancur. Now Udogie. Werner. Not given the chance to go through. And Newcastle have survived, because it's a goal kick for Newcastle. Waiting on that final whistle from the referee. I thought we just got it there, but we didn't. Still, we play on at this moment. Surely there's not much more after this goal kick, if anything at all, after this goal kick. And they feel that they have done it. Those Newcastle fans, the Toon Army in full voice here at St James's Park. And that's it. Eddie Howe and his team, back-to-back home wins for the first time in over a decade for Newcastle. And they had to do it the hard way. Spurs asked them many a question in the second half. They were probably the better side in the second half, Spurs, but ultimately could not finish off their chances. And when you do not do that in the Premier League, you will be punished. And Newcastle did punish them. Alexander Isak with the definitive winner. Harvey Barnes opened the scoring. Dan Burn scored an own goal to get Spurs level, before Alexander Isak, as I said, scored the winner. Final score from St James's Park as Newcastle head into the international break unbeaten. Spurs suffer their first defeat of the season. And that is the final score. Newcastle 2, Tottenham Hotspur 1. There we are. That is the first of our two games this afternoon come to a conclusion. And also the early kickoff between Chelsea and Crystal Palace has ended in a draw. Nothing to separate those two. So Oliver Glasner's team off the mark this season. It means there's only two teams now in the Premier League without a point to start the season. Southampton and Everton heading into the international break. 3 defeats from 3. Palace getting that point, as I said, against Chelsea. Chelsea at 1 draw, 1 win and 1 defeat to start their season. A pretty topsy-turvy start for Chelsea, who are a kind of basket case at the moment. Can't consistently configure results. They lost to midweek in the Europa Conference League, but they did qualify, and they are in the Conference League, of course, Chelsea. And that was the final score there. Chelsea 1, Palace 1. One more game to bring you then this afternoon, and it is at Old Trafford, as old foes are reunited, and that fire is reignited between Manchester United and Liverpool. Kickoff is less than 30 minutes away, and we'll be live in about 20 minutes' time for that one. Do join us. Thanks for your company for Newcastle against Spurs. Spurs beaten, Newcastle remain unbeaten.